years, and she works in the clerk's office already, and she was moved to deputy under Wendy.
Do we have any reason to believe that the HR director will be insulated from any personnel decisions with respect to her stepdaughter?
Well, I don't know what you're asking. What are you asking?
So, as the HR director, you would normally have purview to understand, to see a lot of information about all employees. Does that apply in this case?
Seeing the information about the employee, that's not an issue. That's what you're asking?
Having input in decisions about...
HR does not have input in any decisions when it comes to promoting raises. They're just, that's not their job. She would answer to Wendy, the clerk.
Okay, I would say that given the fact that this was such a sore subject earlier in the year, and that it was chosen to make this appointment via the consent agenda, which is obviously a sore subject, perhaps it could have been handled a little bit better in a more transparent way. I think there are people who are going to be concerned that something is being...
Yeah, I'll disagree with you on that. This is a personnel matter. If there's any review by Labor Council, like the chief referenced, that's not for public consumption. So I think you're asking for information that would never be made publicly available. And the public action tonight is the appointment of the individual, which was on the agenda, and that's the proper form. And any appointment of that nature is always been on the consent agenda. That's never not been the case.
Thank you.
Yes, Mary back.
Hello, Mary Vasilakis. I'm at 33 Glen Way. I have so many thoughts in my head right now. I'll try to keep it as concise as I possibly can. I've been here many meetings talking about the turf field, the request for the turf field for the school, as well as for the children that play soccer, lacrosse, everything. We had 4 varsity teams practicing on one field, having to rotate and break it up into different parts. I stood here and spoke and was told, no worries, it's in the 2020 proposal with the Board of Ed because we couldn't do the cross farms thing. It never happened. We've asked time and time again. I'm a little confused though, Dr. Pascucci, because you mentioned that you were holding a receipt or an invoice in your hands for a certain amount of money, and then you had Donna saying that the work wasn't done or the work was done. If you don't even know if the work was done or if it wasn't done, why are you putting forth the censor?
We know the work was done. Everything was ready to go at that meeting in August. The work from T&M, April, the work from T&M, the work from our township people was all done. It was ready to go as soon as we approved that bill. It was ready.
Right, and the bill was supposed to be done in that meeting that was canceled, correct?
Right, it was
For
a bill to
discussion.
be paid. That was the only place. It wasn't a resolution to do this. It was a resolution to pay bills. Again, you should talk, but it was a project that was ready to move forward the next day.
Go ahead, Mary.
So I guess my question is, do you really think that somebody was trying to put a 2.1 million under the carpet and to slide it through?
Yes. Yes.
How
Yes.
realistic are you that that would actually happen?
No, let Mary finish.
Okay, so I think the point here is that you're not sure, it was the April meeting, at the end of the day, it all is happening clearly for a political reason, and you can say it's not as much as you want, but based on the meetings that I was in, and with all due respect, Mr. Nicholas,
Yes.
the sign that you held up on the Facebook page, that was libelous.
What sign are you referring to?
I don't even want to give it the time. You know what it is.
No, I don't.
right?
I honestly don't.
About Eric Hines.
I held no sign on
Oh,
Facebook.
but you did.
No, I did not.
I'll take
I
it.
do not. I did not.
You held a sign.
I did
and
not.
you said,
No, I did not.
This is not, this is a perfect example of how things are changing. You held a sign on Facebook and you said, this is not how we want to win the election. Just making sure that more people were going to see it. When that didn't work, then all of a sudden this happens. He did so much, Mr. Hines did so much to make sure that Bell Works came to pass. In doing so, as soon as that came to be, and there were many people, including people in this room, who said it would be too crowded, it would cause too much traffic, it would just clog up Homedale, it would destroy us. It is one of the best things to happen to this town, and I grew up nearby in a very, very long period. As soon as it was up and it was a success and everything went through, he got bumped to the side so everybody else could come up and do the ribbon cutting. Now, all of a sudden, it's not moving smoothly the way everybody wants it to, and you're trying to find a way to push him out. Didn't he ask for the third-party accounting, the financial accounting, the forensic accounting to be done? Didn't he make that motion? Do you really think he would make that motion if he had anything to hide? He made that, but yet you're trying to censor him before we get the third-party forensic accounting.
That wasn't the motion.
That wasn't the motion.
That wasn't the motion.
An
Okay,
audit.
that was the audit.
I'm sorry, an audit.
But that was the
A while
audit, that
ago,
was the
he
audit.
made a request.
Right, but it was changed to have the audit the auditor himself. But anyway, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, he's trying to do what he can to prove that there was no wrongdoing.
Thank you. Thank you. Next. Ms. Brew.
Debbie Brew, 15 Cindy Lane. Never plan on speaking, but I can't help myself. Like Mary, I have a lot of thoughts in my head, but I'll start with the hearing, which I have heard compared to the Seinfeld hearing, a hearing about nothing, just like Donna's, a hearing about nothing, it was about an employee that was never hired in a field that was never done. It's silly. It's been a year of wasted time, wasted money on hearings and studies and all to just let this all go by and have nothing be done again. I don't know why all these different interpretations happened with this hearing, because I sat through the 4 hours. What I heard was 4 people knew about this field. What I heard is 4 people wanted this field over there. The infrastructure, the lights in the parking lot were there, it made sense. Then the next part of the timeline that happened was you were knocked off the line. And all of a sudden everybody changed their mind. So it was pulled off and it was done. And no matter what, if it was put on there, not put on there, as it was said during the hearing, it's irrelevant what agenda it's on, there still has to be 3 votes to approve of this. So, you know, Eric also said he does not have the legal ability to authorize anything. Only the township administrator could. There was, in the end, what the bottom line is, and what I cannot stand, that people continuously, deliberately put out miscommunication to the public because there was no written authorization. That's the bottom line. So if things were putting in a rush because people's schedules, I get it. They knew the next meeting this was going to be okay, but nobody knew what was going to happen and that it wasn't going to be okay. So then it was off. And that's what happened. And to go back to the Donna thing too, I mean, you called for the investigation because she was so horrible and allegations that were never founded because nobody ever said she was found guilty of anything. She left in good standing, and the 3rd vote was you saying she could leave in good standing. So I mean, this whole thing is absolutely politically motivated. And the last thing I have to say, the reason it's politically motivated is because you know that you said after the first day of the first hearing where Fran was interrogated, that you said to an attorney in the room and more than one person, this could have all, I told Sean Golden I will cancel the whole hearing if he will support me in the spring for the 2020 line. You know that you said it, you know that you said which attorney you said it to, and that proves to me, and it should prove to everyone, this is 100% absolutely politically motivated. You were ready to throw this whole thing away because you cannot take, you're not gonna be on township committee, and there's somebody that can't take that you will no longer control the township committee if the other people don't get elected. And speaking of campaign signs, yes, there's too much around. I also think we should pass a new ordinance that campaign signs can only go on personal properties because the township is a mess right now. And I will say that if I had stolen a campaign sign, it would be on the front page of the New York Times. But the campaign treasurer for the independents can steal signs off of personal properties and nobody says anything.
Thank you.
He had approval.
No, we didn't.
He did.
Quiet. Virginia is, anybody else new? Wants to speak? I'm sorry, you didn't speak, you spoke for the ordinance, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask some questions. Jerry Buffalino, 20 Barbera Drive. I'm gonna make this less excitable right now. Just ask some questions about the redevelopment.
Perfect.
Sorry. I don't have a copy of the redevelopment agreement, so I don't know what it says or why we executed. I know it's not typical to have a town involved in a financing with a developer, and I assume it's because of the redevelopment agreement.
The financial agreement is the pilot, which is the payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
So it's not, we were never providing financing. The financial agreement is simply the
understand that.
agreement between the town and the redeveloper on how the payments in lieu of taxes will be
But we're
structured.
executing estoppel certificates saying that we're representing and warranting, he's not in default and things of that nature, which puts a little bit of legal onus on this town to make sure we're advising lenders, quote unquote, whether the developer is in sync, right?
Certainly, that's
So
been
what
part of
kind
my
of
job.
liability does that present to us?
I'm not going to speak in public about a legal analysis of the liability, but what I will say is that the redevelopment agreement and the financial agreement require the township to cooperate with the redeveloper's lender and to assist in these types of requests. So we're following our contractual obligation and what the committee did tonight. This isn't out of discretion.
So is there consideration for us executing these documents?
I mean, the documents speak for themselves, but I think to the deputy mayor's point earlier, the committee has not been looking at altering any terms of the agreement except to allow for the refinancing to occur. This has not been, anything beyond that. So it's simply that minor transactional issue. This is not contemplating any other changes.
Are we privy to the loan agreement?
I'm sorry?
Are we privy to the loan documents that he's executing?
If the township is privy to certain financial documents under the pilot, but they would likely be privileged from public disclosure under Oprah.
No, I'm not just saying, are you looking at them is what I'm asking.
I'm not gonna confirm or deny what documents I am or am not looking at, but the committee is certainly, the committee is certainly tasked my office, and we're doing all the due diligence appropriate to make sure that the township's protected in the process.
Okay. And this is no affront to you, Mike, honestly, because
I understand.
you've been a great town
I
council,
I
but
appreciate that.
did real estate council and Archer Griner review these agreements?
The redevelopment agreement and the financial agreement were done well before my firm entered Homedale.
How about the current agreements?
The current agreements, we haven't, we haven't rendered any judgment on the current documents. We're left with the documents because we inherited
What
them.
lawyer prepared them?
It was a previous firm, the committee would probably know.
Was it our attorney or their attorney?
Well, I mean, it was bargained for between the attorneys for Somerset and the Township.
Yeah, that was when Bob Munoz, I think, was here for Dwayne, and Dwayne, it was either
So
both
is
of
this
them or
all
one of
from
them.
the freehold that actually.
I think they're in Freehold, yeah. I
Right.
think they're the one from-
But the current documents we're going to sign, the SNDA and the estoppel, those were prepared by who?
At my office.
Your office. So Archer Griner did these documents.
That's who I work for.
Okay, that's satisfactory to me. I know you're very reputable firm.
Thank you.
There were certain blanks left in some of the pages we saw.
Yeah, so if you look, the resolution approved in substantially final form, subject to the final review of the township attorney, so that allows our ability to fill in those blanks.
The eligibility requirements and certainly the certification of who would manage his property, those things.
We're well aware that there are some items that remain to be worked out.
Right. The concern is, and this is a B lender, it's not a bank, it's a financial entity that raises capital on Wall Street and charges a lot of money to finance an entity. And I've experience with that. So, are there restrictions on how many sell downs they can do under their agreements and things of that nature? So how many successors and assigns you would be dealing with at any one time?
The only provisions that are before us are whatever's in the current redevelopment agreement and financial agreement and what the proposed amendments are. So I can't speak to the terms of Somerset's loan, and that would really be between Somerset and their lender.
Okay, but you're gonna be under
under conditions to notify them if there's an event of the fall.
Absolutely. I mean, well, that's the main gist of a lot of the documents that I'm sure you took a look at, and I can tell you certainly have knowledge of.
A little bit, yeah. Okay, that's all I have to ask.
Good question, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Gina Crisione, 35 Ramblin' Brook Drive. I did come up before, but I didn't get to ask a question, so here I am. I do want to say, number one, that the whole thing with Carrie Ann Calorie does smell fishy. Just wanted to make that point. I was going to bring it up. Also about the consent, when I was looking through the consent agenda, it seemed extremely long tonight. And most of the expenditures seemed very appropriate, but one that stuck out to me was the $28,500 expenditure for the carousel for the Harvest Festival. I think that's happened in previous years. What money do we get back from the festival? What are the revenues for the festival? Is it worth doing?
Made a lot of parking.
So the 25 is for all the rides. It's the
All the rides,
carousel,
okay.
the what we call merry-go-round, all the inflatables. So,
But you don't charge for them independently?
no, the only expense for anyone attending is the $10 for parking, which we waive to a resident as well.
Okay, and what were the revenues for the whole festival?
I don't think Bob Ward has finished all that up yet, but the only revenues we get, we charge the vendors for being there, we charge people for parking, and they sell beer and wine, which we get a portion of that. And what else? Oh, we also take some sponsorships. So, Ward's putting all that together, and we'll have a report for the committee.
Okay, do you have any idea from previous years? I'm
No.
just trying to get a sense of all this money that's being put out, because I've run the Earth Day Festival for quite a few years, and it cost us about $1,000. So 28,000 plus I
It's a
don't
lot
know what the
more
other
people, though.
expenditures were.
It's a whole different, it's a different.
Yeah, we had
Oh, I
about
know,
7,000
I know.
people there, about 13, I'm just gonna estimate this, maybe I shouldn't, but about 13,000 collected just in parking alone. So,
Okay.
but he'll put everything together, the TC will get it, and
Okay.
you can ask him.
Okay, another question is, what I wanted to ask before about agenda item 2019-319. I don't understand even what it says, except that it says Homedale Library. So could you tell me how that relates? to-
Sure, so
that-
the township has a lease with Somerset for the area that houses the library. And under the lease, and it's very common in a commercial lease, there's a provision that if there is a refinancing, the tenant has to sign a subordination agreement and provide a tournament. So basically, in our capacity as a tenant, we need to provide that representation to the lender, which basically is the lender saying, we're now the landlord, or have the rights of the landlord in certain instances. So it's a legalese document, but it does contain important representations that have been reviewed by council.
It doesn't change anything having to do with the lease at all?
No, not substantively, no.
Okay. And one other question, agenda item 2019-316B. I think that had to do with the Gulf Station on Route 35, on Bethany Road and Homedale Road. Could you tell me what's going on with that, what that's all about?
I'm actually not familiar with this.
Basically,
I know it's
they're
up for
putting a,
sale.
Yeah.
Fran, why don't we let her, they're basically, they're getting rid of the oil change, and they're gonna put a convenience store there.
Oh, okay.
Inside the
But I thought the
base.
gas station was
Inside the
for
base.
sale, I thought I saw it somewhere for
I
sale.
believe, I don't know, but I know that they're just putting, instead of doing oil changes in car maintenance, they're gonna sell potato chips and Diet Coke.
And I would just note, that's not a governing body
That-
decision, that was a
that was
zoning
a
board
zoning board
decision.
decision,
This
right.
is
Yeah, no,
just
but
a-
I was reading it, I couldn't make heads or tails of what it was about.
That's
Okay,
all it
thank
is.
you.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Leah Shave, 11 Ladwood Drive. I want to go back, if I could, to the question about the independent audit. I don't know what the exact wording was, but I was here at that meeting, and I remember when Eric called for it, excuse me, Mayor Hines, and it seemed to me that it was an odd choice of dates, that it was only 3 months. And I remember coming up here and actually specifically asking, could it be extended, and that it should be done by an independent investigator sooner or whatever. And I do remember Greg making the motion. So my question is, How did it then get from going to be an independent to extending beyond 3 months to now the auditor auditing himself and it just being 3 months? How did that get on the agenda that way when it was
I did
presented
not put this
differently?
item on the agenda, so, there
Can
were
we find out who
discussions-
did?
there
How
were
did it end up
discussions
on
with,
the agenda?
I talked, there was a meeting held, trying to get from the mayor exactly what he wanted with the, our CFO, our acting CFO, and that's what we came up with. And we put
But
out
here's
the-
my question, it wasn't what the mayor wanted, it was something that was put forth by the committee. So if that was put forth by the committee, I'm asking who then put it on the agenda?
Good question.
And how did it change from what was presented here, what I heard, to that?
I don't have an answer for you, but what else? Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. My next, point is, again, I applaud you for going forth with the censure. I think people are forgetting the timeline of how this happened. The one thing that is consistent with everything with the turf field that's been involved in this town is it's been going around the wrong way. I have to be honest, when we were all in here, meeting after meeting, and heard that this was gonna go through the HYA process and the proposal they put forth under Mayor Critelli, we were thrilled. The public was absolutely thrilled that this was gonna happen the right way, all sports were going to be addressed, and then 2 weeks after it was approved, we have emails going back and forth. The meeting did not happen, if I recall, on April 9th, because 3 committeemen didn't show up. Not because it was removed by somebody who knew what they were, and had a conscience change. 3 committeemen who did not know that that was gonna be on there didn't show up. People are forgetting that. Please go back and look at the timeline before you start throwing things out there and really look at what happened and get the facts straight. I've been to every single meeting, I know what I've heard. I disagree that T&M should get paid for that though too. I'm just gonna go up there and say that. I think they were a little complicit. I think there is a quid pro quo. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no, yes, Frank. I'm sorry, Francine, go ahead.
Francine Campus, 2 Country Squire Lane. I will say that, number one, I just want to commend the committee for finally addressing things and doing some action, because what I've seen in the past year has been horrifying for the taxpayer. I was on the advisory rec committee, okay, which the town paid a lot of money for. Those surveys went out to everyone in this town. Everyone had the opportunity to answer. Those results came back, and surprisingly, the top of the list was not a turf field. So I'll just make that statement, okay? Then after that, everybody's been saying politically motivated. A lot of things have been happening. Maybe they are politically motivated. Maybe Mr. Nicholas is causing trouble for politics. I don't really care. He came out with things that everybody in this town should be aware of. And I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful that some of this stuff's coming out. Because I came to all the meetings with the investigation, and who authorized this, who authorized that, pointing here and there. Nobody's taking ownership. That troubles me. If you believe in a turf field for this town, admit it, admit that you did it, admit that you approved the studies, admit that you want it to go forward, and admit that you think everybody wants it. And then I will have confidence. I may not want the turf field, but I'll have confidence in my mayor and the governing board. But that's not what happened, because I was at the meeting where Mayor Hines said, I saw the opportunity at the swim club, and I decided to go forward. And then, when it comes to who authorized work to be done on the swim club, he wouldn't admit it. The other thing is, the witch hunt on Donna Vieira, let's not forget why it started. It was not over authorization of bills, or whether she listened to Mayor Hines, or whether she talked to TNM. It was nepotism, which was brought out by an employee that's no longer here, okay? And when that investigation came out, there was a number of things very disturbing that came out. Days off not documented. The HR person was part of that nepotism. That makes me suspect as what's going on. But I'd like to know, she left on good standing with a package. Now we call for a forensic audit, which was supposed to be by an independent group, and now nobody's admitting how that changed, and it's the auditor auditing themselves. Who's dictating that? And after you spend the taxpayers' money, I want to know what's going to happen. Is somebody going to get a package? Is the taxpayer going to be reimbursed? Let's stop spending the taxpayers' money and we do nothing with the results. The recreation survey, we spent money, did nothing with the results. I came up here at that meeting and said I did not accept the recommendations given by T&M because I was on that committee, okay? Let's not waste the money. We did an investigation on Donna Riero. Cost the taxpayer even more money to get rid of her,
Thank you.
okay? But I just want, it's not politically, and everybody keeps saying we're attacking somebody's family. I haven't heard one comment attacking the family. Mayor Hines, I'm sure. I actually like him very much, and I think he has a lot of views that I agree with. But no, I don't see anybody attacking families here. We're just tired of no transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none? Motion to adjourn? Motion. Second?